Welcome! You're listening to the Uncharted Lancaster podcast, where we explore the hidden histories, forgotten places, and long-buried secrets of Lancaster County. Using modern digital storytelling tools, each episode brings a new piece of local lore to life, revealing the strange, the surprising, and the story's history left behind. Let's begin.
So, I want you to close your eyes for just a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
Imagine it is the dead of winter in 1879.
Oh man, that is a bitter, bitter cold right there.
It really is, like that kind of cold that just immediately hurts your lungs when you breathe in. We are in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Prime agricultural country.
Exactly. It's night, and we are standing in the middle of this vast, snowy field. And if you look around, you can see the warm lights of farmhouses way off in the distance.
Because this is a very prosperous place. This is the absolute heart of Pennsylvania Dutch country.
Right. It's a place known for rolling farmlands, massive tobacco crops, and deeply, deeply pious religious communities.
You've got the Moravians, the Mennonites, the Dunkers.
People who work incredibly hard, pray very often, and are just generally known for being extremely sensible, practical people.
It's essentially the picture of pastoral, industrious America in the late 19th century. Very efficient, very orderly.
It looks orderly, sure. But right now, in this specific snowy field, something very disorderly is happening.
Something that doesn't fit the picture at all.
Not even a little bit. There are 7 young men out here in the dark, and they are not farming, they are digging.
In the frozen ground.
In the rock-solid frozen earth. And they aren't just digging like a hole for a fence post either. They have dug 24 massive craters in this field.
Some of these holes, the reports say, were up to 6 feet wide.
6 feet wide. They are completely exhausted. They are freezing to the bone. And this is the most crucial part of the whole scene. They are completely, absolutely silent.
Not a single word is being spoken between them.
Not one. Because they aren't digging for potatoes or a well or anything practical. They are digging for gold.
Ghost gold, basically.
Right. And they are doing all of this, going through this miserable labor in silence because a local woman, a woman known as the Sorceress of Lititz, told them to.
She told them that a cold, dripping hand from the spirit world led her to this exact spot.
A cold, dripping hand. It is just such a wild image. And today, we're going to dive deep into her story. The story of Hannah Hetherley.
Often called the Queen of Witch, or the Witch of the Valley, by the papers.
We're going to unpack how this one woman held an entire, very sensible community under her emphatic sway. That's a direct quote from the papers, by the way. Emphatic sway.
It is one of those historical events that just completely upends your understanding of the era. I mean, we tend to think of the late 19th century as this steady march toward modernity.
Yeah, you think of electricity, the railroads, the Gilded Age.
Exactly. Industry. Science. But here, just a few miles from a train station that connects them directly to Philadelphia and New York City, you have wealthy, educated, modern farmers operating on pure medieval logic.
And to really understand why they did that, we are going to use Hannah's story to pull back the curtain on the world of Braucherei, or what is much more commonly called powwowing.
Which is absolutely essential, because you really cannot understand Hannah or those boys in the field without understanding the magical system she was operating in.
We have a really fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive. We've got original newspaper reports from 1879, the New York Sun, the St. Louis Globe-Democrat, the Boston Globe.
Even the Lancaster Daily Intelligencer.
Yeah, local and national coverage. Plus, we have some really excellent modern historical analyses of Lititz folklore to help ground it all.
And we should probably flag right at the top that those original 1879 sources have a very specific attitude.
Oh, they have so much attitude. It drips off the page.
You have these city reporters basically parachuting into rural Pennsylvania, and they treat the locals almost like they were a newly discovered backward species.
They constantly use words like credulous and ignorant. They are just sneering at the superstition of it all. But what makes this deep dive so compelling is that while the newspaper reporters are sitting there laughing at it, the locals are absolutely terrified.
The fear was very, very real to them.
So our mission today is to cut through that outsider skepticism. We want to figure out who Hannah Hetherley actually was. How did she convince sensible men to dig for invisible gold?
And what exactly is this powwow magic that seems to be the hidden engine running underneath all this pious, straightforward Christianity?
It's just a wild ride. We are talking cat's blood, earth mirrors, books written in the blood of the evil one.
Let's actually start with the basics right off the bat, because the terminology here is genuinely confusing for a lot of people.
It is. We are talking about German-speaking settlers in Pennsylvania, white European Christians. And yet, almost everyone refers to their folk magic as powwow.
Right. If you say powwow to the average person today, they immediately think of Native American culture.
Yeah, you think of a gathering, a ceremony, traditional drums, dancing. It is a very specific, respected cultural term.
So it feels incredibly jarring to hear it applied to a German grandmother sitting in a log cabin in Lititz, Pennsylvania.
So how did that happen? Why is it called that?
It's essentially a linguistic accident that just mutated into a cultural staple. The word powwow is actually an Algonquian loanword. Specifically, it comes from the Narragansett word, pawwa.
Kawa. And what does that translate to, literally?
It translates roughly to he who dreams.
He who dreams. That's beautiful.
It is. In its original context, it referred to a medicine man, a priest, or a spiritual healer within the tribe. It was a title for a leader who had spiritual sight.
Okay, so the word itself is definitively Native American.
The word is yes, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But the practice we are discussing today, the magic Hannah was doing, is thoroughly European.
Brought over by the settlers.
Exactly. The Pennsylvania Dutch, who are actually Pennsylvania German, Dutch being a corruption of the word Deutsch, they brought these specific magical and healing practices with them from the Rhineland and Switzerland back in the 1700s.
Then what did they call it in their own language?
They called it Braucherei.
Braucherei. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. It comes from the German verb brauchen, which means to use or to try.
To try, like trying a cure.
Exactly that. In this specific context, it means trying a cure or using a blessing. So a practitioner of this magic is called a Braucher.
Okay, so we have these German settlers doing Braucherei. How do we get from that to the English word powwow?
The prevailing historical theory is all about observation and misunderstanding. The English-speaking settlers in Pennsylvania were living alongside their German neighbors, and they saw them performing these really specific healing rituals.
Like what kind of rituals?
Like mumbling subvocal incantations over a sick cow, or blowing their breath over a burn wound, or using special herbs and charms.
Just general folk magic healing.
Right. And then those same English settlers looked at the Native Americans in the surrounding region, who had their own distinct healing rituals, which often involved chanting and, dreaming.
And the English settlers just kind of lumped them all together in their heads.
Pretty much. They basically looked at the Germans and said, oh, they're doing that powwow thing, just like the Indians do.
Wow. So it started as a sort of dismissive, generalized label from outsiders?
It did. But language is a funny thing. It stuck so hard in the regional vocabulary that eventually the German settlers themselves started using the word powwow when they were speaking English to outsiders.
It just became the accepted translation for their own folk magic.
Exactly. It's a total linguistic mix-up.
That is such a key distinction to make right up front. Because when you read the newspaper articles about Hannah Hetherley, they don't call her a brochure. They call her a witch. They call her a sorceress.
And they do that because those words sell papers in New York and Boston.
Right. But if you actually knocked on Hannah's door in 1879... would she have ever introduced herself to you as a witch?
Absolutely not, never. And this is probably the most critical thing to understand about the entire culture of the Pennsylvania Dutch at that time. There is a very sharp, very serious dividing line between Braucherei and Hexerei.
Hexerei being actual witchcraft.
Yes. Hexerei is black magic. It is strictly malicious. A hexer, which is what they call a witch, is someone who places a curse on you.
They're the ones causing the problems.
Exactly. They make your cow dry up so she won't give milk. They make your child fall inexplicably sick. They bring bad luck down on your farm.
And the brochure is the opposite of that.
The Braucher is the antidote. Braucherei is considered white magic. In fact, to the practitioners, it's not even really magic at all. It's intensely Christian. It's faith healing.
Because they use religious texts, right?
Constantly.
Right.
When a breaker heals you, they're almost always invoking the Trinity. They're saying, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
So they view themselves as channeling God's power.
They do. They are using God's power to fix the things that the devil or a hexer has broken.
So to the local community, a brochure is fundamentally a good guy, a protector.
Usually, yes. They're the local healers and protectors.
But Hannah Hetherley seems to really blur that line, doesn't she? I mean, the sources describe her as having the whole community under her thumb. That doesn't sound like just a sweet old faith healer.
And that is exactly what makes Hannah such a fascinating historical figure. To the outsider reporter, she's just a generic witch because she does spooky things.
But to her neighbors...
To her neighbors, she was technically a broocher because she offered healing services and lifted curses. But she was a broocher with a very, very sharp edge.
She leaned into the dark side of the reputation.
She seemed to actively cultivate this ambiguity. She wanted people to know she could heal them, absolutely. But she also wanted them to be a little bit afraid that she could hex them if she really wanted to.
She essentially weaponized that fear to protect herself.
She absolutely did. And she filled a vital, massive gap in the social structure of the time. You have to remember the context of living 4 miles outside of a town like Lititz in 1879.
You're pretty isolated out there.
Very isolated. If your child gets severely sick in the middle of the night, you don't have a phone to call a doctor.
And even if you could get a doctor, medical science in 1879 wasn't exactly a sure thing.
Honestly, it was still pretty hit or miss. And doctors were expensive. So Hannah became the alternative healthcare system for the valley.
She was the healthcare system, the local therapist, and the spiritual security consultant all rolled into one person.
That's a great way to put it. The New York Sun report actually lists an incredible range of specific medical services she provided.
What kind of things was she treating?
Well, she treated St. Anthony's dance, which is an old term for chorea.
Chorea, that's a neurological disorder, right? It causes those uncontrollable, jerky movements.
Exactly. Very frightening if you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
She also treated epilepsy and something they called wildfire.
Wildfire. I saw that on the notes, and that just sounds terrifying. What is wildfire?
It's an old folk name for erysipelas. It's a severe bacterial skin infection.
Oh.
Yeah, it causes these rapidly spreading, bright red, incredibly burning patches on the skin. It's very painful. And before antibiotics, it could be quite dangerous.
So how would a broker treat something like a severe bacterial infection?
They would treat it by blowing the fire out, literally blowing their breath gently over the inflamed skin or reciting very specific scripture verses intended to cool the burn.
And people believed it worked.
They swore by it. But she didn't just treat physical ailments in humans. The sources say farmers constantly consulted her about crop failures, too.
Because if your tobacco crop failed, you didn't just look at the weather report and say, oh, we didn't get enough rain.
Right. You worried it was a deliberate hex placed by a jealous neighbor. So you went to Hannah's cabin to find out exactly who cursed you and to pay her to break the curse.
And the part that really blows my mind is the business advice. The sources specifically note that wealthy businessmen sought her sanction for land speculation.
That detail is just incredible. It really highlights the central paradox of this whole story.
You have these buttoned-up, serious men. They are likely elders in their local church. They are dealing with modern markets, negotiating tobacco prices with buyers in Philadelphia.
And yet, before they actually sign the papers to buy a new plot of land, they quietly take a carriage out to the log cabin to ask the sorceress if the spirits approve of the real estate deal.
It is literally like a Wall Street broker consulting a tarot card reader before finalizing a corporate merger.
It is exactly like that. But if you put yourself in their shoes, it makes sense in their worldview.
Oof, so?
Because farming and business are inherently risky. You can do everything perfectly right, plant at the right time, fertilize, work hard, and a sudden hailstorm can still wipe you out.
So Braucherei offered them something that hard work and capitalism couldn't provide.
A sense of control over luck. It was an insurance policy against unseen, unpredictable forces.
So Hannah is incredibly powerful. She is essential to the local economy in a weird way. Let's actually go to her domain, because the sources give us such a vivid picture of her living situation.
Oh, the descriptions of her property are amazing. It's like a set designer from a gothic horror play built it specifically to be as spooky as possible.
It really is. It's located about 4 miles from Lititz, out on the road heading toward Mannheim. And just the road itself sets the tone. The reporter describes it as incredibly muddy and swampy.
You literally have to trudge through the dark muck just to reach her. It's an effort to get there.
And the cabin itself.
It's a humble log cabin, but it's backed right up against this steep hill that is crowned with rocks and thick cedar and pine trees.
So it's constantly in shadow.
Very shadowed. It feels oppressive, just naturally. Now, the property is fenced in with a neat white paling fence, which sounds kind of charming and domestic.
Until you see what's behind the fence.
Right, until you see the massive guard dogs.
2 large black dogs, according to the reporter.
Tugging aggressively at their chains.
Yeah.
They're clearly there to intimidate visitors. But there are also normal features. a bake oven in the yard, a windlass well, a woodpile, a small stable. It is a working rural homestead.
But the inside of the cabin, that is where the atmosphere really takes a dramatic shift.
The interior is pure, unadulterated atmosphere. Dark, gloomy. The reporter says there is a heavy, musty smell that hits you the second you walk through the door. There's no carpet on the bare floorboards.
And the decor is, well, it's exactly what you would expect from the Witch of the Valley.
They've got bunches of strange herbs and little tea bags hanging by the window, air drying.
And by the fireplace.
3 large, heavy black iron rings dangling from the fireplace. We don't know exactly what they were used for, but they look intensely ritualistic.
And then we have to talk about the animals. We mentioned the terrifying dogs outside, but inside she has companions too.
There are black cats just lazily stretching near the warmth of the fire. And this is absolutely my favorite detail from any of the sources, a dove.
A single dove.
A dove sitting quietly on the mantelpiece. The reporter specifically writes that it cooed a sepulchral note.
Sepulchral. That is such a fantastic word choice by the journalist, like a voice echoing out of a tomb.
Exactly. It creates this incredibly heavy, eerie, almost suffocating vibe in the room. You really have to wonder how much of this Hannah consciously curated.
Did she keep the dove and the black cats just because she liked animals, or does she know exactly what her customers expected to see when they walked in?
I lean toward the latter.
Yeah.
If you are selling expensive access to the supernatural, you can't live in a bright, sunny cottage with cheerful flower boxes.
Right. You need the shadows, you need the musty smell. It's all about branding. It adds to her credibility.
It proves she is who she says she is.
And what about Hannah herself? When the reporter from 1879 finally gets past those vicious dogs and steps into this gloomy room, who does he actually see?
He sees a woman who perfectly looks the part. She's described as a crooked-backed dame, roughly 60 years old at the time. She has a small round head, a thick mass of tangled gray hair, and a very sallow, deeply wrinkled face.
She carries a long hickory staff, too.
And she has a bag made entirely out of snakeskin dangling from her left arm.
The snakeskin bag is such a specific, intentional touch.
It's a very loud signal of power in folk magic. But there was one particular detail the reporter from the St. Louis Globe-Democrat notices that I find so surprisingly humanizing amidst all the spooky descriptions.
What's that?
He's looking at this woman he considers a scary old crone. But then he explicitly notes that she has a pretty set of natural teeth.
Really? A pretty set of natural teeth?
Yes. He writes that despite her advanced age and all her wrinkles, her teeth suggest she was very likely a woman of fine appearance in her youth.
That's fascinating. It's this tiny moment where the witch caricature slips for a second and you realize, oh, this is just a real person. She wasn't born the Sorceress of Lititz. She was a young woman once.
But by 1879, she is a deeply formidable figure. The reports say she is highly independent. She has saved a considerable amount of money.
She owes nothing to anyone.
And that kind of financial independence is quietly dangerous in a strict patriarchal society. She doesn't need a husband to support her. She doesn't need to rely on the church's charity. She has her own capital.
And she has the community's absolute fear. The report explicitly says that even the wealthiest farmers are afraid to cross her, and they specifically fear for their barns and cattle.
That is a very specific economic kind of fear.
Because in an agricultural community, your barn is your entire livelihood, right?
Exactly. Fire is the ultimate catastrophic disaster. If people genuinely believed Hannah could conjure that wildfire or cause lightning to strike a barn or just hex the cows so they wouldn't produce milk, that is a massive economic threat.
You do not mess with the woman who holds the magical keys to your bankruptcy.
You really don't.
So let's see this power in action. We have a highly specific step-by-step account of a visit by a correspondent from the New York Sun. And this guy is a total skeptic.
He's a city guy. He thinks this is all backwoods nonsense.
He brings a local guy with him, an employee of a liveryman, just to guide him there. And that local guy is apparently terrified the whole time.
But the reporter is cocky. He walks right up to the cabin. Hannah opens the door, and she doesn't welcome them in. She doesn't say hello. She just stands there staring at them, completely silently.
The silent treatment. It's a classic power move.
It forces them to enter her space entirely on her terms. So the reporter decides he's going to test her. He lies right to her face. He tells her he traveled out there because he wants her help finding some stolen jewelry.
He's trying to trap her into a fake reading?
He is. He even hands her a silver dollar as an upfront payment. And Hannah, She spots the lie instantly.
She doesn't fall for it at all.
Not for a second. She looks at him and just says, "You don't live about here."
Busted right off the bat.
Immediately. And then she does something that I just absolutely love. She says, "I will keep the dollar you gave me. Now be upright."
She just keeps the money?
She pockets the money. She basically charges him a wasting my time fee.
Yeah.
She isn't intimidated by this big city reporter at all.
And when he finally drops the act and admits the truth that he thinks her whole business is a massive fraud, and he's really just there to write an expose about the local gold digging scandal, how does she react to that?
She completely explodes. The newspaper report says she flew into a violent passion. She raises her hands high over his head and starts muttering unintelligible words with a loud hiss.
She's hexing him, or at least she's performing a very convincing hex.
Exactly. She is using the tool she knows works best, sheer fear. She is performing the role of the dangerous, unhinged witch to get this disrespectful intruder to back off.
But in the middle of this intense confrontation, she also reveals something incredibly crucial. She actually shows him her tools. She brings out her famous charm book.
This book. This is essentially the holy grail of the entire Lititz story. She keeps it carefully wrapped in a skin, maybe that snake skin from her bag, maybe something else we don't know for sure.
And she tells him how she charges it, right?
Right. Yes. She claims that during the full moon, she buries the book either under the eaves of her house or deep in an ash heap to imbue it with magical power.
And what does the book actually look like?
It's described as being printed in alternating red and black ink. And here is where the local folklore gets really heavy. She tells the reporter that the black ink is the blood of the evil one, and the red ink is the blood of the good spirit.
Or sometimes she just tells people it's written entirely in blood.
Just to keep them on their toes.
And what is actually written inside the book? Did he see the text?
She claims it contains the 7 books of Moses. Now, we really need to pause on this detail because this is a very real, very famous historical artifact in the world of folk magic.
The 7 books of Moses. Now, I grew up in the church, and I thought there were only 5 books of Moses in the Bible.
In the canonical Orthodox Bible, yes. You have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's it. But in the underground world of the occult, there's a text known as the 6th and 7th books of Moses.
And what is that exactly?
It is a grimoire, a magic textbook. It claims to be the hidden, lost magical arts that Moses secretly used to perform all of his biblical miracles.
Oh, like the plagues of Egypt, turning the staff into a snake, parting the Red Sea?
Exactly those miracles. The book claims to teach you the specific spells and incantations Moses used to defeat the Pharaoh's magicians. Copies of this book started circulating widely in German communities in the 18th and 19th centuries.
So popular.
It was incredibly popular among the Pennsylvania Dutch, but it was also considered extremely dangerous by the community.
Dangerous how? Like getting excommunicated dangerous?
Worse, it was considered the nuclear option of Braucherei. Most average practitioners just use simple almanacs or little handwritten notes passed down from their mothers.
But with 6th and 7th books?
People deeply believed that if you didn't use that specific book correctly, the book itself would turn on you and hex you. It could literally drive you insane just by reading it wrong. It was a book you had to respect and fear.
And Hannah claims she has an authentic copy.
She claims she has a copy that was brought all the way over by her grandfather from the Harz Mountains in Germany.
The Harz Mountains. Why is that specific location important?
The Harz Mountains are legendary in German folklore. They are the traditional setting for Walpurgisnacht, which is the witch's Sabbath.
It's like the mythical headquarters of German black magic.
Precisely. By claiming her book came directly from there, she's establishing a serious, undeniable lineage. She's telling the reporter and her community, I'm not just making this up in a log cabin. I am the direct inheritor of ancient, old world power.
So she has the terrifying book, she has the fierce reputation, she has the absolute fear of the community, and all of this careful world building sets the stage for the main event.
The story that brought all those reporters to Lititz in the first place.
The great gold digging saga.
This is such a classic treasure hunting narrative, but the specific details Hannah adds are just so bizarre and wonderful. It starts, as these things always do, with a vague local legend.
There was a rumor going around about a heavy chest of gold that had been deposited by an unknown party somewhere east of downtown Lititz.
But, people don't go out and spend 10 nights digging through frozen bedrock just because of a vague town rumor. You need a powerful catalyst.
And Hannah provided that catalyst. She had a dream.
Tell us about the dream. Because the way she describes it to these young farmers, it's not just, hey, I dreamt there was gold under a tree. plays out like a gothic horror movie.
It really does. She gathers these 7 young men together. And remember, the sources explicitly note that some of these men were the sons of very wealthy tobacco growers.
Right. These are not desperate, starving paupers looking for their next meal. These are educated men with resources.
Exactly. So she tells them that she was sleeping in her cabin and she was suddenly seized in the middle of the night by an invisible power.
And then the hand.
The hand. She says she was physically pulled out of her bed by a cold, dripping hand that she could not see, but she could feel its icy fingers gripping her arm.
That is such a viscerally upsetting image. Cold and dripping.
It instantly implies death. It implies someone reaching out of a muddy grave. She says this invisible entity led her out the door and over the snowy fields. She claims she walked straight through wooden fences as if they were made of air.
Like she was in a deep trance state.
Right. She was wearing nothing but her thin indoor slippers, but she felt absolutely no cold despite the snow.
And where did the dripping hand finally take her?
It dragged her all the way to Raber's Mill, which was a well-known local landmark. And when she got there, a disembodied voice cried out from the dark, "Dig here, you'll find money."
And to back up this incredible story, she claims her animals experienced it too.
Yes. She says while this entity was in her cabin, her fierce guard dogs were howling and rolling around in terror on the ground, and her black cats were hissing at something invisible standing in the room.
She uses the animals as her reliable witnesses, because animals are supposed to be able to see spirits.
But she doesn't just stop with telling them about the dream. She actually performs a physical confirmation ritual the very next night to prove it.
She does. She builds a specific fire out of hazelwood. Now, hazel is traditionally associated with divination in European magic. Dowsing rods for finding water are very often made of hazel.
Wood has purpose.
Absolutely. And over this hazelwood fire, she cooks cat's blood.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you right there. She literally cooks cat's blood in a pot.
That is exactly what the New York Sun reporter wrote down. Her quote was, "I built a fire of hazelwood and cooked cat's blood. All the signs and tokens pointed to gold."
Did she actually kill and bleed a cat for this? Or is this like a metaphorical herbalist name?
We honestly don't know for sure. It's very possible cat's blood was just a local folk name for a specific dark red plant resin or extract. Similar to how dragon's blood is just a type of incense resin.
That makes sense.
But given Hannah's intense theatricality and her desire to strike fear into people, it is entirely possible she used actual animal blood, or at the very least, she let those farmers believe it was real blood.
The visual image of this old woman hunching over a fire in a dark, musty cabin, boiling blood to find ghost gold. That is incredibly potent stuff. It completely convinced them.
It convinced them enough to risk hypothermia. They formed a crew.
And there is a fascinating little detail in one of the modern analyses that mentions the specific locals involved were all born on Christmas Day.
All 7 of them.
Uh-huh.
That seems statistically impossible for a random group of neighbors. It really does. It's highly likely that's a bit of later folklore that got glued onto the story over the years. Or, alternatively, maybe Hannah was just extremely selective and recruited a much wider group initially, whittling it down to only those with that birthday.
Why Christmas Day specifically?
In Braucherei and in many older European magical traditions, being born on a high holy day like Christmas or Good Friday supposedly confers the sight.
The ability to see the supernatural.
Exactly. It means you can see roaming spirits or hidden treasure that normal people can't. If you are going to hunt for supernatural cursed gold, you absolutely want a crew that has the sight.
Okay, so they have the specially selected crew. They have the precise location at Raber's Mill. Now they need the equipment. And we are not just talking about shovels and pickaxes here.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
They brought out the heavy magical artillery for this. They use something the sources call an Spiegel.
An Spiegel, which translates to earth mirror.
Yes. It's a specific form of kakoptromancy, which is divination using mirrors. An earth mirror is usually a special piece of glass, sometimes heavily darkened with smoke or backed with an unusual foil.
How do you use it to find treasure?
The idea is that the Braucher, in this case Hannah, looks deeply into the mirror and can literally see through the physical layers of the earth. It functions like a magical X-ray machine.
So they used it to pinpoint the exact depth and location of the iron chest?
Right. And then there were the magic papers.
These are amazing. The reporters actually describe finding these leftover papers scattered around the empty holes. They were left behind as physical evidence.
What did the papers look like?
They were thick, circular pieces of heavy brown paper. They were intricately marked with star points or radiating rays around the edges.
And the text?
The text was written in 3 concentric circles. The inner circle had Hebrew inscriptions, the middle circle featured a Latin quotation, and the outer circle was a long German prayer.
Hebrew, Latin, and German. It's an incredible linguistic layer cake.
It really is.
And it shows the deep sophistication of Braucherei. It's not just simple, quote-unquote, hillbilly magic. It is actively synthesizing high ceremonial magic. The kind of complex stuff learned scholars in Europe were studying with local, everyday Protestant piety.
What were the papers actually used for in the hole?
These papers acted as seals. The idea was that you place them down in the excavation site to legally bind the guardian spirits protecting the gold, or to magnetically pull the heavy treasure upward through the soil.
So picture the entire scene out there. It is midnight. It is the absolute dead of winter. The ground is frozen solid to a depth of at least 3 feet.
And these wealthy guys are out there for 10 nights in succession.
10 nights. They dig 24 massive holes. And some of these holes are 4 to 6 feet in diameter.
Think about the immense physical labor involved in that. Digging frozen ground by hand is literally like digging through concrete. They're sweating through their coats, their backs are aching, they're exhausted.
And Hannah is right there with them in the dark.
What is she doing while they are doing the heavy lifting?
She is standing at the edge of the craters, conducting the orchestra, basically. She's waving her bare arms around in the freezing air. She's using a ladle to sprinkle the diggers with some sort of dark herbal juice.
To protect them from the spirits.
Exactly. She is working to keep the spiritual energy focused and safe while they break the earth.
But there was one rule, one absolute unbreakable rule that she gave them.
Silence. Total suffocating silence.
Why is silence always so important in these specific treasure hunts? It is a universal trope in folklore. You see it in old stories, in Ireland, in Scandinavia, basically everywhere. The underlying idea is that magic exists in a liminal space. It's a fragile dream world.
And speaking breaks that fragility.
Yes. Human speech belongs entirely to the mundane, normal world. If you speak a word out loud, you instantly anchor yourself back into normal reality.
And since the ghost gold doesn't actually exist in normal reality,
the connection snaps, the spell breaks, the treasure vanishes back into the ether.
And of course, because this is a classic story, that is exactly what happened.
It is the inevitable, dramatic climax of the entire saga. You really can't have a good treasure hunt story without the tragic, last-second failure.
The diggers actually claimed that on one specific night, near the end of the 10 days, they saw it.
They physically saw the gold.
They saw the chest itself. Some of the accounts say it was a heavy iron chest filled with $50,000 in gold coins. They saw it magically ascending from the muddy bottom of the hole, just rising up through the dirt toward them.
They had it. It was hovering right there.
They almost had it.
Yeah.
But overcome with absolute amazement, or maybe just sheer relief that the freezing work was over, one of the diggers made a noise. Maybe he gasped in shock. Maybe he excitedly shouted, "There it is!" We don't know the exact words he used. But the very microsecond the sound left his lips, the heavy box dropped.
Bloop, gone.
Dropped completely out of sight, sank instantly back into the solid earth, lost forever.
It is heartbreaking for them.
Yeah.
But it is also incredibly convenient for Hannah, isn't it?
Extremely convenient. Anthropologists actually call this specific narrative device the broken taboo motif.
It serves a very important psychological function for everyone involved.
How so?
Because it perfectly explains why the magic worked. They could say, hey, we really saw the gold. Hannah's spell was real. But it simultaneously explains why they didn't get rich.
It perfectly validates Hannah's immense power while shifting 100% of the blame entirely onto the clumsy clients.
Exactly. Hannah could just shrug and say, I brought you the gold, but you fools couldn't keep your mouths shut.
It wasn't that the magic was fake, it was that the human diggers were weak. Therefore, the entire belief system remains perfectly intact.
So the gold is permanently gone. The massive holes are empty. And now the sun finally comes up on Lititz, and the rest of the community finds out what has been happening out at Raber's Mill. What was the local fallout?
Well, it was deeply humiliating for the diggers. You have to imagine the bizarre scene the next morning. You have 24 giant fresh craters in a prominent farm field.
You really can't hide that kind of landscaping.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
The sensible farmers, the guys who stayed in their warm beds all week, they thought this was absolutely hilarious.
Dunk them.
Relentlessly. The newspaper report says that neighbors actually started following the exhausted diggers around on horseback just to taunt them.
That's amazing.
They would shout insults and laugh at them. They effectively spoiled the charms by flatly refusing to take any of it seriously.
It definitely breaks the spooky, solemn mood when your neighbor is yelling jokes at you from a horse.
And then came the very public shaming. Because the newspapers got hold of the story, and they got the names. The Lancaster Daily Intelligencer actually published the full names of the men who were digging.
Ouch. Getting locally doxxed in 1879.
Imagine opening the morning paper over breakfast and seeing your name listed as one of the gullible dupes who spent 10 nights digging for ghost gold.
Only one of the men publicly denied being there. The rest of them just had to put their heads down and live with the embarrassment.
But Hannah, did she take any of the blame or mockery?
Not at all. She went straight on the offensive. And this is where her dark hex side comes out again.
Yeah.
She publicly vowed vengeance on the town.
She threatened them.
She swore severe bad luck and ruin on anyone who interfered with her business or mocked her magic.
And did it work? Did people back off?
It worked in the sense that the underlying fear definitely remained. The report specifically notes that even though people were openly laughing at the young diggers, they were still very afraid of Hannah herself.
Fathers are telling their sons to stay away from her.
Exactly. Not just because it was foolish to dig holes, but because it was genuinely dangerous to anger her. They were still terrified she would burn their barns down in the night. So her power base was maybe shaken a little by the failure, but it definitely wasn't destroyed.
This perfectly brings us back to the outsider perspective.
Yeah.
We touched on this at the beginning, but looking at exactly how the media covered this bizarre event tells us so much about America in 1879.
It really does. You have major national papers, the New York Sun, the Boston Globe. They are completely fascinated by this local story, but it is a very specific kind of condescending fascination.
It's very much a look at the primitives kind of angle.
Yes. The physical descriptions they print are so incredibly focused on making them sound alien. They describe a local men as having long, straight black hair, wearing wide, broad-brimmed hats, and using hooks and eyes instead of buttons on their coats.
And they describe the women strictly wearing sunbonnets.
Right. They mistakenly call them Dunkards or confuse their specific sex with Moravians. They constantly emphasize that these people, quote, know very little of the outside world.
Which is wildly ironic because, as we noted earlier, these are the sons of wealthy commercial tobacco growers.
Exactly. These farmers were shipping products. They probably knew the spot price of tobacco in London markets better than the city reporter did. They were deeply connected to the global economy.
But the reporter deliberately frames them as isolated, uneducated peasants just to sell the weirdness of the story.
The articles call them credulous and ignorant and loudly claim it is simply amazing that such wild superstition still exists in a civilized modern country.
It highlights the massive tension of that specific era. The late 19th century is culturally all about progress. Science is winning, industry is booming.
And yet, right outside of town, here's this stubborn pocket of old world magic that absolutely refuses to die out.
And that ultimately is why Hannah Hetherley is such a significant historical figure. She perfectly represents the sheer persistence of that old world.
The advanced civilization of Lititz, with its new schools, its railroads, its telegraph wires, simply wasn't enough to erase the deep-seated generational belief in Braucherei.
It really suggests that modernity is a much thinner veneer than we like to think it is.
Precisely. When these people were desperate or greedy for gold or sick with a strange fever or just deeply afraid of bad luck, they didn't look to the telegraph office for help.
They didn't look to the scientific medical establishment.
No. They looked straight to the scary old woman in the gloomy log cabin, the one who confidently claimed she could see the unseen forces controlling their lives.
It highlights that the strict line we draw today between religion and magic was incredibly blurry for these people. They were pious, God-fearing Christians. They were sitting in the front pew at church every Sunday morning.
But on Tuesday night at midnight, they're out in a freezing field drawing magical circles in the snow with an earth mirror.
Because for them, it wasn't a contradiction at all. It was all part of the exact same massive spiritual ecosystem.
God was very real. The devil was very real. The curse to gold was very real. And Hannah Hetherley was the only one who knew the phone number for all of them.
So we have to ask the ultimate big picture question here. Did the gold chest actually exist at Raber's Mill?
Historical consensus. Almost certainly not. It is a classic folklore motif that got out of hand.
But did the magic work?
That is the much deeper question. To the community, yes, absolutely. The failure to secure the physical gold didn't disprove the magic system at all. In a beautifully twisted way, it proved it.
The gold appeared right on schedule.
It appeared, and it only vanished because the sacred rule was broken. So the internal logic of their belief system remained utterly intact. Hannah didn't lose her mystical status because of this failed dig. She remained the Sorceress of Lititz.
It is just a masterclass in human belief and psychology. Now, before we wrap this deep dive up, I want to go back to one very specific detail that has been sticking in my mind since we started.
Which detail?
The book. Hannah's terrifying charm book.
Ah, yes. The supposed source of all her power. The 6th and 7th books of Moses, written in red and black.
The sources say she kept it wrapped in skin, and she would bury it under the eaves of her house or deep in an ash heap to charge it under the full moon. She guarded that thing jealously.
She definitely wouldn't let it pass from her hands while she was alive.
Right. And Hannah Hetherley died eventually. We don't have any historical record of her ever passing that specific book on to an apprentice or a family member.
We don't. And usually, when a powerful broker died back then, their magical books were either passed on in strict secret to a successor, or they were completely destroyed by embarrassed family members who wanted to hide the legacy.
But if Hannah was as fiercely independent and secretive as we know she was, maybe she didn't give it to anyone at all.
So you were thinking?
I'm thinking if we follow the internal logic of the legend, that heavy book printed in the blood of the evil one might still be out there.
Buried in the cold soil somewhere near Mannheim and Lititz.
Maybe trapped under the rotting, forgotten foundations of a log cabin that doesn't even exist anymore. Just waiting.
Waiting for the next sorceress to come along and dig it up.
Or perhaps just waiting for some skeptical city reporter to accidentally find it and finally believe in the magic.
That is a genuinely chilling thought to end on. I'll just say this. If you are ever hiking out near Lititz in the winter and you see a strange spot of disturbed earth near a grove of hazelwood trees,
maybe just keep walking.
I would strongly advise that, yes. Do not read the red ink.
This has been such a fascinating journey into the weird, hidden history of Pennsylvania, from cold, dripping hands to boiling cat's blood and the bizarre linguistic roots of powwow.
It's a great reminder that history isn't just a dry list of dates and political battles. It's about dreams and intense fears and the wild stories we tell ourselves in the dark to feel safe.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for listening to this deep dive, everyone. We will catch you on the next one. Stay curious out there.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Uncharted Lancaster podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating or review wherever you listen. It really helps more people discover the show. For more fascinating local history, visit unchartedlancaster.com. And if you'd like to go deeper, check out one of Adam Zern's books at unchartedlancaster.com/books. Until next time, keep exploring.